In this question, we have m multiplied by x is equal to y. And what we have to do is to transpose for x. Now, another way of asking this question would be to find x or make x the subject of the formula. So when we want to find x or make x the subject of the formula or transpose for x, that means we want x by itself on one side of the equal sign. It could be either on the left side or on the right side, as long as x is by itself and everything else is on the other side of the equal sign. Now, this equal sign means that the left-hand side is balanced with the right-hand side. So whatever we do to one side of the equal sign, we must do it to the other side to keep things balanced. Now, seeing that I want x by itself, that means I have to get rid of this m. How do I do that? Well, I can divide this side by m and the m's will cancel. So I'll show you that now. So I just divided the left-hand side by m. Therefore, these m's will cancel out and this x would remain. Now, seeing that you made this change to the left-hand side, you'll have to do the same thing to the right-hand side, which is to divide by m. So I'll have y divided by m. So the m's will cancel. So what I'll remain with is x is equal to y over m. And that's your answer here. You have transposed for x, you have x on one side of the equal sign, and everything else is on the other side. So I can write this question as y is equal to mx, and it's the same thing as mx is equal to y. So you can interchange the right-hand side and the left-hand side of the equal sign, and it will still be the same equation. Again, our objective is still the same. We want to transpose for x, therefore we want x by itself on one side of the equal sign and everything else on the other side. So again, to get x by itself, I'll have to get rid of this m, and the way to do that here is to divide this right-hand side by m, and whatever I do to one side, I'll have to do to the other side, so I'll be dividing this y by m. So again, the m's will cancel out, and what I'll remain with is y over m is equal to x. And that's your answer here. You have transposed for x. Now here I want to look at an alternative way to do this same question. So we're going to be transposing for x, which means we want to get rid of this m and bring it across on the right hand side. Now, when we look at the operation between the m and the x, that operation is multiplication. M multiplied by x. So if we take the m and bring it across the equal sign on this side, on the right hand side, that operation will change from multiplication to division, and therefore the m will go underneath the y. So what you will get is x is equal to y over m. The m went underneath the y. This line here means division. Y divided by m. So a point to note, when you're going to move something across the equal sign and the operation was multiplication, it's going to go across, the operation is going to change to division, and it's always going to go underneath. So if I had y was equal to mx, and I wanted to transpose for this x, again the m is being multiplied by x, and when I move the m across to the left hand side, the operation will change to division and will go underneath the y, always going underneath. So I'll get y over m is equal to x. Now I'd like to visually show you how the m is moving across and going under the y. So again, I'm going to transpose for x. And that's your answer, transposing for x. Now I'll just like to show it with the mx on the right hand side. So I'll be moving this m across the equal sign and it will be going under the y. And that's your answer. So now let's look at the second question where we have some numbers involved. We have 3x is equal to 2. So this is an equation. And we're going to find x, which means to transpose for x or make x the subject of the formula. So I'll write my question first. 3x is equal to 2. If I use the first method, I'll want to get rid of the 3 on this side. So I'll divide both sides by 3. The 3's will cancel out, and I'll remember x is equal to 2/3. Now for the alternative method, where we'll be carrying this 3 across the equal sign, and the operation will change from multiplication to division, I will have x is equal to, and when the 3 goes across, it will go underneath the 2, and have 2 over 3. Now let's look at this visually to see what actually took place. In this question, we have E is equal to M multiplied by G multiplied by H. Now we want to make G the subject of the formula, which means to transpose for G or find G. So what we want to do is take the M and the H and move it across on the other side of the equal sign. Now since the operation between M, G and H is multiplication, we can rewrite the question as E is equal to MHG, because multiplication is commutative, meaning 5 by 3 is the same as 3 by 5. So it doesn't matter if you switch around the numbers when you're multiplying. So now what I'll do, I'll take this MH, which has been multiplied by this G, and I'll move it across the equal sign to the left, and it will go underneath the E. So I'll have E divided by MH. And that will be equal to G. And that's your answer. Now in this question, we have 2/3 multiplied by P multiplied by Q is equal to R. And now we want to find P, which means to transpose for P, which means to make P the subject of the formula. So that means I want P by itself on one side of the equal sign and everything else on the other side of the equal sign. Now the operation here is multiplication because we have 2/3 multiplied by P multiplied by Q. So when we move the 2/3 and the Q across, it will go underneath the R. Now since multiplication is commutative, we can write 2/3 times Q times P is equal to R. And now we'll take the 2/3 times Q and move it across the equal sign, and it will go underneath the R. So I'll have P is equal to R over 2/3 Q. Now you can leave your answer like this, but there's a way to simplify this even further. So look at what will take place here. We'll have P is equal to, and we write the 3 on top like this, 3 times R over 2 times Q. You're probably wondering, how did I get that? So now let's look at R over 2/3 Q and see what that means. That means R divided by 2/3 Q. So we simplify that by putting R divided by 2/3 times Q over 1. So that'll be R divided by 2Q over 3. Then we change the division to a multiplication sign and invert this divisor. So we have R multiplied by 3 over 2Q. So that will be R over 1 multiplied by 3 over 2Q. And since nothing would cancel, we multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. So we get R times 3, which will be 3 times R. And then we have 1 times 2Q, which is just 2Q.